Hey, good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a good Friday here. Got a bit of a severe weather outbreak, not a large outbreak, and I decided not to really open up like a 2 or 3 hour storm webcast, kind of like what I was planning. You can see the anvil is way off to the northwest here. The Cirrus in the very, very bottom. That's one of the anvils, about 120 miles away, but anyway, we do have a tornado watch box out. Let me switch over to that, and you can check that out. Got a slight risk with an enhanced area right out ahead of that. And there's the one watch box we have covering southern Oklahoma and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Let's check out that radar. And let me put the warnings up. There we go. Just a few severe thunderstorm warnings up and down the line. A couple for the Durant area, another for the Denton-McKinney area, and the other way down here near Eastland and Ranger. Storms right now, they look kind of like multi-cells. Let me see if we have any circulation on those. A little bit of a mesocyclone in this one storm at around Frisco. Let me get some good storm relative velocity going. And I think on this I'm going to pick probably 23010, see what that does. Maybe that's a little high. Yeah, I think that'll probably work okay. Okay, got to keep in mind the radar is way down here. Let me shrink the box so you can read the velocity as we go through this. Okay, so there's the velocity. And we're looking at this number way down here. So you can see we've got about 19 coming into the radar. And we have about 33 going out. That's not very strong. We're talking about 50 knots across maybe a few miles. Maybe about 3 miles or so. Let me take a look at that. Yeah, that's about 3 miles. I'm going to set the dot right there in the center of that circulation. And you can see that this is out on the leading edge of the storm. So we're seeing rotation kind of like that. And this is the main updraft area right there. And we've probably got the downdraft kind of coming around like this. Spectrum width. Maybe it's showing a little bit of a delineation of the downdraft. It's possible. Not very apparent any patterns in that with the spectrum width, but anyway, there's the reflectivity on that. Let's check out the storm that is north of Denton. That also has a little bit of a circulation on that, and you can, let me outline it. There's the outbound, and there's the inbound. So this forms a couplet. So right here we have about 30 out. We have about 27 in here, so that's going to be about 60 knots of rotation. And you can see that this is a wide rotation. So we're talking about a mesocyclone being embedded in that storm. It's a rotating storm. I don't see anything in here that looks like a tornado. Center of the circulation right there, where I put the dot. You can see that's out ahead of the storm, out in the updraft area, which is about where we expect it. So as the storm progresses, I would expect maybe it would start pulling a little bit of the precip around and giving it a little bit of a hook echo shape. Okay, DFW off the hook for now. These storms are moving to the southeast a little bit, and I'm sure a few of those will be in the area soon. You can see we did have a tornado warning earlier. Let's check out the text on that tornado warning. Weather spotters confirmed tornadoes, so we did squeak one out of the storm right here. I don't see it. Okay. Located north of Valley View. It doesn't give a direction or distance, but there's the storm. That's the one that had a tornado. Then we've got a couple of disorganized, very weak, maybe elevated storms to the north. And then we've got this other storm on the tail end near Eastland. Don't see much of a circulation here, but this is pretty far from the radar. If I was going to look at the storm, I would go over to the Dias radar, which is just about 20 miles to the west. Okay, the general shear pattern across the area, across the environment right here, we can see that with the clear air returns right here. So we've got this air coming towards the radar, and we've got this air here going away from the radar. So we can kind of trace that zero line. We should do that with the base velocity. Let's do that. And we can see a very slight S shape, not as much as we had yesterday. But this shows us that the lowest 1,000 feet of the atmosphere, kind of south-southeast, and then we have south-southwest above about 1,000 feet right there. Okay, let's go to the large-scale pattern and see what's going on. We'll zoom out and look at the SPC mesoscale analysis. We see an inverted trough feature right here. The main low way off to the southwest, probably a little bit of a heat low out there. There's been some very intense heating in the Midland, Monahans area. So that, and there might be a little bit of dynamic cyclogenesis in that area. But we have the front located like that. So these storms are developing along that frontal boundary right there. And we need to look for a dry line. Let's check that out and bring up, I guess we can bring up the plots here. Okay, the dry line is going to be where the dew points begin falling off as you go west. So we got a lot of mid-60s dew points along the Interstate 35 corridor, dropping off to 63 here, 64 at, I guess that's, let's see, that's not Stephenville, that's Brownwood, I think, and then 58 right there. So I'm going to put that dry line right there. And we can see the radar kind of traces out the location of the front. So that's very helpful. So there you go. We got a triple point just south of Ranger there. And this doesn't suggest that we can't get storms back behind the dry line, but the environment is less favorable. So we expect mostly elevated storms if anything gets going back behind the dry line. Then the moisture axis. Let's check that out. That appears to be in East Texas. We got 67 there at Lufkin. 68, 69 there at Beaumont and this other station here. So probably something like that from about Lufkin up to the Dallas area. And if we wanted to, we could draw a few isotherms, we could do 66. And so on. And as we do that, we can kind of get an idea. I'm just kind of sketching over very quickly here, but if we did something like that, we could kind of figure out where patterns might be a little bit more favored for surface-rooted storms. Okay, 250 millibar analysis. There's the negative tilt trough there. Jet stream coming down the backside. Remember, this is this morning about 12Z. So the main jet energy well up to the north, and we're under the influence here in Texas of, I think, probably the subtropical jet. Maybe something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but that does look a little bit suspect to have 50-knot flow well to the south of this core. Whereas here in Midland, only 40 knots there. 500 millibar there, showing a trough right there over New Mexico. Looks like another trough over Oklahoma there. And the jet energy kind of set up like that. There's the jet axis. A little further south. 700 millibar flow, we can use this to kind of maybe outline where the cap is. There's the 10 Celsius line. 12 line looking something like that. And then the 8 line looking like that. Obviously, as we go further north, we pick up a few more storms in this area, and they're kind of shut down to the southwest because of the cap. And then at 850 millibars, we can see a little bit of the southerly flow that we had on the opening clip there. 25 knots there at Dallas. Maybe a little bit of a low-level jet kind of flowing like that. And the 850 millibar front. Like that this morning. Okay, let's check out the development of the storms today. I'm going to load up a visible satellite imagery. Visible satellite image sequence. Okay. So this is going to be from Marshall Space Flight Center. It's weather.msfc.nasa.gov. And that comes up and we can see the development of the storms along the cold front right there. So pretty obvious where the front is. So a lot of the initiation that we have today is forced along that cold front. It's not a very widespread development either. So I think maybe there's just enough capping in place to keep most of the convection shut down. And I'll pause that right there. All right, let me take a look at the chat here, see who we got here. All right, pretty good crowd here. We've got Fun with Tech, mentioning tornado warning in Johnston County, Oklahoma. That was a little bit earlier there. Sue M. And Ryan Toomey's missed last night's live session. Yeah, we were on kind of late last night. Fun with Tech is here, and Greg Schultz, and Andrew, and Alexi, Carl, and Ancient Astronaut. 81 degrees there at Canyon Lake. Canyon Lake, is that northwest of Austin? I remember when I lived in Austin, we used to do our astronomy club meetings out, or our viewing sessions out at Lake Buchanan, which is kind of up the Colorado River. It was some very neat viewing territory, but that was a very long drive. Tree Nelson is here, and let's see, Ryan says North Texas still under the gun north of Dallas. Ron Chalfont in Southern California checking in, and Eddie W. Greg Shaw says audio is perfect. Yeah, I found a weird setting in Windows where my volume on the microphone was locked down for some reason. I can't figure out what happened there, but I fixed it. Brett Dean says 58 degrees there at Philadelphia. Got some storms way up there. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at that and see what's causing storms way up in Pennsylvania there. Dwayne Ward is here, and Victor Cabot, and Carl Berghoff says, remember you can right-click on the warning to set the vector for storm relative motion. Yeah, that's one other technique you can do, and what Carl's talking about is you take any of these watch boxes, you right-click and go to storm motion from warning. And that'll set the storm relative velocity for that motion vector. Okay, Alexi and Victor say audio is good. Alexi says don't forget to hit that like button. Yeah, I appreciate that. Brett Dean's seeing a little bit of buffering there. Andrew's seeing a little bit of buffering too. Not as bad as last week. Okay. If it gets worse, I know of a setting where I can bring that down even further. Local storm report 4 miles north of Valley View. Justin talking about that tornado earlier. 7:22 p.m. Ryan mentioning a tornado warning in North Mississippi there. Radar indicated. Mike Estwick checking in. 43 degrees cloudy in Denver. And Ancient Astronaut southwest of San Marcos. Okay, that's a little bit further down there. That's where all those concrete plants operate. Maybe a little bit west of there. And Ahmed from Saudi Arabia checking in. Okay, very good. One quick look at the storms before we press on. Looks like we're getting a little bit of seeding of this storm right here, getting rained in the inflow area. So this storm here, this is looking a little bit stronger at this time, starting to move into the, pretty much moving into the Frisco area there. Let's check out that movement real quick. Yeah, so we're seeing a movement of about maybe 120 on that storm, so it'll be heading into the McKinney area pretty shortly. And there's a quick look at the storm relative velocity right there. We're seeing about 30 out and about 17 in. So that's going to be about 15 knots, or I'm sorry, about 45 knots of rotation, broad scale rotation. So nothing too severe at this time. Okay, let's look at our thermal picture of what's happening across the country. Cold front from Pennsylvania, where they're getting those storms right there. Maybe a bit of a warm front coming off the coast here, off Long Island. And then the tail end of that front coming into Texas, getting the storms going in that area right there. In fact, looks like a cold front, warm front set up right there. So there we go. And that carries westward into Arizona and New Mexico. Still a little bit of baroclinicity in that area, so we may have to watch for some redevelopment of baroclinic lows in that area, unless high pressure kind of spreads out these temperature contrasts later over the weekend. Okay. What do the soundings look like today? Let's check that out. There's the Fort Worth sounding for 20Z. Did they have a balloon launch at 20Z? They must have. Oh, that's kind of weird. I'm looking at that right there. But yeah, the temperature trace, this does kind of look like a late afternoon sounding. So let's check that out. Got quite a bit of capping on this sounding. All of that is capping. And the bottom of the sounding, that temperature line is at about 82 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's even with heating, we're having a lot of trouble getting through that cap right there. So a lot of this convection definitely forced, and it's developing where we have enough lift along that front to push it up through this capping. And probably with the approach of the upper level dynamics, we're probably seeing a little bit of erosion of this capping going on. So that's probably helping too. A lot of the better cape, though, way up here above 14,000 feet. And that's not what we like to see on a tornadic outbreak day. We like to see the cape kind of set up like that, a lot deeper and a lot closer to the ground right there. Lower LCLs and cape closer to the ground. We don't have that today, so cape way up there at the top of the sounding. Okay, dynamics. Let's take a look at that real quick. We have kind of a channeled jet going on today, so that's coming from Utah into the northern New Mexico area. There's one wave right there that probably set off a little bit of convection earlier, but by 0Z. There we go. This wave shifts to the west. Not really any development. We don't have a very strong wave linked up with that boundary down here. See, most of what we have aloft, it's looks like it's ridging. I think we've got probably a shortwave ridge kind of buried in there. So that's probably kept a lot of the development along that frontal boundary kind of suppressed. So maybe as some of this starts moving in, maybe that would have a possibility to start setting off a little bit more convection after dark. So let's take a look right there. So we're talking mostly Oklahoma here. Looks like maybe that wave. This is about midnight. So that could set things off a little bit more, a little bit later this evening. We get kind of into a channeled pattern by tomorrow. This is tomorrow evening's webcast. Just kind of a jet along Interstate 40 there. And then for Sunday, things move pretty quickly to the southeast. Looks like one big lobe of vorticity coming through Texas on the day Sunday, and then we get a little bit of northerly flow like that, and a bit of ridging coming in behind that. And then for Monday's webcast, kind of quiet here in Texas, but we're starting to get some upper level energy working across the central plains there. Stronger flow coming back in, and we'll probably start to see the reappearance of storms in the central plains if we can get the moisture, if we can get that back to the north again. Okay, so let's take a look at the forecast sequence here. And I think we'll bring in the mesoscale models. Let me do that real quick. And I think for this one, we're going to use the high resolution rapid refresh. Let's do that. Okay, so this will give us an idea what the storms will be doing overnight. So we're a little bit concerned about that upper level energy working in here after 10 or 11 p.m. We'll see if that does anything. Okay, so we're just now starting to get the benefit of the 0Z data. So that's all the radio suns across the southern plains. And we've only got coverage through about 13Z, which is about 8 p.m. tomorrow morning. Okay, let's see what happens. The initialization of the model looks fairly decent. It's got those storms there near Durant and Sherman. Maybe it's a little bit off in the Dallas area, but we can kind of use this to kind of monitor the trends over the next few hours. So it looks like those persist along the Red River there and continue moving east. And then I think with the approach of that wave, we see development in western Arkansas of those storms. So kind of consolidation into an MCS, and it looks like that happens even down the line in the Dallas area. So this is going to be about midnight. So just kind of a disorganized area of cells moving southeast, and I think our severe potential is going to be kind of minimal tonight. And that's the end of the sequence there. So by 4 in the morning, just kind of an area of storms from about Tyler up to Memphis. Let me reload that one more time and see if we have any more frames, and then we're going to go to the GFS. Okay, we got a few more frames there. So there's 12Z, that's going to be about 7 in the morning. There's the front, and this is all just forced shower activity back over the frontal boundary. So thunderstorms pretty much shut down. Most of that has moved off into Tennessee and Mississippi. Okay. So here's the GFS forecast. So things will move east over the nighttime hours across Arkansas into Tennessee and Mississippi. By the time we do the webcast tomorrow night, it's going to be looking like this. Cold front off the Texas coast. Bit of a warm front from about Huntsville through Asheville to about Charlotte, North Carolina, and a few storms along that boundary. You can see we don't have a very deep fetch of southerly flow off the Gulf. If anything, it looks like most of the moisture is heading this way. So you can see not a very good moisture supply in place, and not very good storm relative inflow either, feeding these storms here. Then into Sunday, things move into the Carolinas. There's our front there in southern Georgia, warm front through North Carolina like that. And here we're starting to get a little bit of a fetch of moisture from the Gulf. So maybe a few isolated storms along that boundary. High pressure moving into the southern plains and Great Lakes here. Then we get this northern storm here in Wyoming and the Dakotas. Pretty dry since we don't have a good moisture return. See, there's a southerly flow coming up from Mexico. That's just going to bring in warm air into that storm. And that's about it. So for Monday night, a little bit of isentropic lift north of the front. Not really much convection. Then for Tuesday night, a little bit of cyclogenesis here in the plains. There's our fronts right there. Again, we're not quite tapping the Gulf. Most of the moisture is going up to the Mississippi, kind of like that. This is mostly downslope flow, so kind of a warm day in Texas, warm and dry. Then for Wednesday, here comes our northern system into Ontario and Quebec. A little bit of winter weather up there in northern Ontario. Have a bit of a Pacific system coming together here. See that right there? Some snow showers back in the Great Basin area. The moisture off the Gulf, mostly feeding northward into Arkansas and Louisiana there. Then for Thursday, looks like finally we get a strong system coming together, some very strong upper level dynamics linking up. And now we get a good feed of moisture northward into this system. So looks like maybe severe from eastern Kansas to southern Illinois. Then things move eastward on Friday. Got a good moisture supply, cold front coming in. So thunderstorms across East Texas and Arkansas, Missouri. Then that moves eastward on Saturday. Some more redevelopment back in Texas. Moisture feed continuing up from the Gulf like that. So Sunday, everything moving into the southeast U.S. And then by, let's see, Monday the 1st, high pressure across the eastern U.S., kind of keeping the Gulf shut down. See, we got that northerly flow in the Gulf right there. And then we get a couple of northern plain systems moving through this area, and that's probably about as much as I want to forecast off that model. Okay, one last look at the storms. I intended to bring up some extended severe weather coverage, but as you can see, we don't have very much of a big severe weather outbreak, just a few strong storms up and down the line. This storm here looking a little bit suspect, but these are not very impressive. These look just like multi-cells right there, and the circulation, well, this one's got a little bit of a circulation in it. Let's see, we got about 40 in and about 35 out, so that's going to be about 70 knots of broad scale rotation. So maybe this has a little bit of potential. The storm here over Mineral Wells, not much of a circulation in that. Maybe a little bit of weak circulation right there. So there's the updraft area of that storm right there. Maybe getting a little bit of a wall cloud in that possible. And there's our main storm of the evening, coming into the western McKinney and Frisco area. Circulation tightening a little bit on this storm, so a lot of the stronger outbound in this area right here. So the broad scale rotation, that's about 30 versus about 40. Let me try that again here. 30 versus 20. That's about 50 knots of broad scale rotation. And here we've got some fairly tight shear right in that spot right there. So about 30 or 40 knots of very tight shear right there. So that's probably supporting a bit of a wall cloud at this time. If we go aloft up to the higher tilts, we pick up a little bit more of the meso. So you can see we've got about 35 out here and about 12 in. And then going up to the top of the storm, we start picking up the storm top divergence. So we've got inbounds towards the radar right here. We've got outbounds in this area here. So this is the top of the storm spreading apart. So if we have no low-level information to go off of, we can use this to get an idea of what's happening. So that's some pretty healthy storm top divergence and probably supporting a bit of a back shear on that anvil. There's the top of the storm right there. We're seeing probably about 42,000, 45,000 for tops on that storm. And we can see that the higher velocities are sitting right over that updraft area right there. So let me put a dot on this higher core at 34,000. And we can see it's sitting over this updraft area right there. So this definitely has severe characteristics. There's definitely some overhang in that. And maybe even a bit of a beware here. See that donut shape? This here probably is where we have a very strong updraft coming up through this 21,000 foot layer right there. And then above that, look at that, now we've got very high velocities right above that spot. Let me do a quick cross section here. That's pretty good, isn't it? Some very good overhang. Very classic. I might screenshot that one. Let me do that real quick. Maybe that's one for one of my books here. See, that's going to be 0124. Let me grab the time on that real quick. 0124. Okay, back to the radar. So anyway, what we have going on is updraft under here, updraft base. Probably a lot of lightning in this area here. Usually when I see very strong overhang like that, the storm is pretty electrically active. So what we got here is the updraft kind of looking like that, or the cumulonimbus. There's the updraft coming up into the storm. This is the stronger part of the updraft. And way up here we get the formation of some grapple and wet hail. Heavy rain up here at about 30,000 feet. You definitely don't want to be in an airplane punching this storm and going through the spot right here. You would probably be in some serious trouble there. Okay. So back to the main radar. Let's check that out. Okay, so the storm is continuing to move southeast at about 120 degrees relative to true north. Okay, I'm going to put a dot here on this center of the strong rotation. I'm going to go back a few frames. I want to kind of get a baseline on the motion of the storm. Looks like I can see a little bit of cyclic development on these frames further back, because you can see earlier, looks like the stronger shear way up here. I'll put a dot in that area. And then it looked like we had some redevelopment further south. So you see that right there. Looks like that's a little bit of redevelopment. Maybe this kind of occluded up to the north. So yeah, we're seeing a movement of about 120 to 130, and that's going to bring it into the McKinney and northern Allen area there. Okay. Anyway, I'm not too sure I want to do an extended live cast on this. I'm not too sure that's going to produce a long track tornado or anything like that. Hopefully it doesn't. If it does, if this thing really becomes severe, probably what I'll do is I'll come back on and we'll do a webcast on that. But anyway, let me see. Let me take one last look at chat here. A lot of discussion, so I don't think I can really read all this. First subtropical storm grew in the North Atlantic, Tropical Storm Arlene. Is that right now? Wow, April. Yeah, that would be pretty early. Victor Cabo says TVS east of Denton, northwest of Plano at 8:18. That was about 23 minutes ago. 2-inch hail. Okay. All right, that's probably about all I'm going to do for now. Like I said, I'll come back on if this thing really becomes severe and starts producing a large tornado or something like that. But I have a feeling it's going to keep doing what it's doing right now. Well, guys, I appreciate you watching, and we'll be back on tomorrow night. Thanks, and have a good evening.